A default or delinquency status is a position that no single borrower would want to find him or herself into, and so is a government. A government will be considered to be default or delinquent if they fail to honor obligations that fall on their papers. Those are the bonds. If a government has challenges honoring coupons when they fall due or maturities of instruments on redemption date, that government would be considered default, and just like any other borrower, that delinquency status will erode investor confidence in the government, the trust, and that poses a risk in future debt borrowing or in future borrowings. For that reason, a government does numerous debt management strategies or uses the various debt management tools to ensure that clustered maturities are declustered and spread over time to reduce refinancing risk that may occasion default on the obligations. Welcome to our today's video on switch bonds, which are instruments or tool that is used to decluster clustered maturities to reduce refinancing risk on foreseen future dates. We shall be looking at switch bonds after 3 seconds breaks. In meantime, like this video, engage us in the comment section, and don't forget to share this video with another person. Those parameters are very important because the algorithm relies on them into spreading this information to another person. If you are new to the channel, give us your subscription, and if you find value in our videos, hit the notification button so that when we upload the next video, YouTube algorithm will notify you. See you after 3 seconds of break. Welcome back, and thank you that you liked this video. I appreciate the comment that you have put in the comment section, and I will be grateful if you share this information to another person. Our new subscribers, welcome to our channel. Let's look at the first thing, and that is looking at what a bond is. And a bond is a debt instrument or a paper that is issued by the Exchequer, the CBK, on behalf of the government, acknowledging a loan from the investors. Currently, a bond is a paperless acknowledgement of a borrowing or a loan from the investor to the government through the CBK. That means that that paper has a predetermined maturity date and coupon date when interest accrued on those bonds need to be paid out. And that is very important to note. There are maturities that are supposed to be paid back to the investors on redemption dates. Then there are the periodic coupons that are paid to the investors 2 times in a year. Those are 2 sets of obligations that are very important to be honored by the government unless they fall into default or delinquency, which has the problem of causing increased inflation, the default itself that reduces investor confidence and harbors future debt financing. The second important thing that we must look at is what a switch is. And in a normal layman's language, a switch is a movement from one position to another position. So a switch bond, this is a bond that moves your investment from one point, that is a bond, to another bond. So a switch bond issue is an issue that offers optional choice of an investor to commute their investment in a current short-term bond or maturing bond, which we call them source bonds, into a newly issued long-term security or bond, which we call them destination bonds. So in a switch issue, we have 2 sets of bonds. There are the targeted bonds, which are short-term or maturing bonds, which are targeted to be sourced for the switch to relocate or to move those investments into longer maturing bonds, which we are calling them the destination bonds. As per this schedule, which is a calendar issued by the central bank, you can identify which are the source bonds or the bonds that are targeted for declustering, the bonds that the government intends to issue new bonds to allow an option by the current investors in these three targeted bonds to move or commute their investments into longer maturing or long-term securities. And what is the purpose for a switch bonds? A switch bond targets to relieve a refinancing risk on a future date. When an analysis is done by the Exchequer and they realized that on a future date, there is a refinancing risk. And what a risk would be, a risk is a probability that the expected amounts for those redemptions may not be realized or received from ordinary issues of bonds as per the historical data on previous issues. If you have been keen or if you are keen in looking at the previous reopened issues on monthly throughout the year, you would note that the government in some cases was not even able to realize the actual amounts that were in the neighborhoods of 50 billion. That occasioned reopened or extension of biddings in what we call tap sales. In those issues, the government being unable to realize its targeted amounts on the monthly issues, then from this structure, you should be able to identify that as expected on 7th of April 2025, there are two maturing instruments, that is the FXD1 2022-3 and the IFB1 2029, which require 100 billion for their redemptions. And remember, that amount may not be realized from a single issue in the domestic market, owing to the amounts that the government has been able to raise over the years. On 5th May 2025, another instrument that will be maturing is the FXD1 2025, which would require 104 billion. So in one short 30-day period, almost a month, from that 7th of April to 5th of May, the government would require a total of 204 billion. That is a huge sum of amount to raise from the domestic market, and owing to the debt management structure by the Exchequer, then that poses a refinancing risk. The possibility that the government may be unable, foresees an inability to raise that kind of money to finance the redemption of those bonds. And that is purely the purpose of switch bonds. Instruments that are issued targeting specific bonds that are supposed to mature in a short period in the future, and because of the refinancing risk, the government or the Exchequer issues optional bonds in order to decluster that maturity, to reduce the amounts that are required for that maturity redemption. That is purely the purpose of a switch bond. So these bonds are issued to target direct conversion of maturities of treasury bills and bonds into longer term securities to decluster or reduce the expected amounts of maturities to be redeemed on a future date. So the specific period that is being targeted here is April and May 2025. And the specific bonds that are targeted for conversion, as we had indicated as per this schedule, are the FXD1 2022-3, IFB1 2029 that require the 100 billion, and FXD1 2025 that require 104 billion. When was the last time the government issued switch bonds? This is not the first time that the Exchequer is issuing a switch bond. We had a switch bond in June 2020 and another switch bond, an IFB, that was issued in November 2022. So basically, a switch or switch bonds is a plan by the Exchequer to convert maturing and short-term bonds into long-term debt securities for purposes of reducing a refinancing risk. These are optional instruments, meaning that the holders or the investors holding the targeted bonds are not coerced into taking up the new long-term securities in the switch issue. Purposely, it is those investors who are holding those securities that are targeted that are given priority in allocating the new long-term securities that are issued with terms that are attractive to who those investors convert. And therefore, then, if the investors holding the targeted securities don't take the option, then that one will be opened for other bidders to bid. So basically, a switch bond is not issued to collect or to receive fresh financing, but purposely to convert those short-term and maturing instruments into longer-term debt instruments with the purpose of reducing the refinancing risk expected on a future clustered maturity. Why would it be very important to take up switch bonds? Number one is that switch bonds reduce the possibility of default or delinquency by the government. That is very important because it is the government that is the main spender or the main consumer of debt in a country, and therefore the finance sector, the banks, the insurance companies, the microfinance institutions, they are anchored by the government. So even if individual investors don't take up the switch issue, then fund managers will always take up switch bonds to ensure that the government, which is a main consumer of debt instruments, they don't fall into default. The other importance of taking up switch bonds is to ensure that inflation is put into check. The last one is to ensure that the government still remains liquid and maintains the investor confidence. Lastly, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to give us your subscription and hit the notification button so that you get notified when we upload the next video. Thank you for watching.